Hello, welcome back. A month ago, we sat down here and I pulled up a list of my Goodreads TBR, an export from Goodreads. And we went through one by one each book that I had on the TBR in chronological order based on when I added them to the TBR. And I tried to whittle down the list from this crazy list of 900 books to something more manageable. And we did really well. And it was a great exercise for me. And I'm hoping that by the end of this, I end up with a functional TBR, a list of books that I actually want to read right now. Because over the years, the list has become this crazy monstrosity of all of the books that I ever wanted to read at any time. And it's just not a helpful tool for the reader that I am right now. So this is technically a part 2 to this sort of series that I'm going to be doing. If you've not watched part 1, don't worry about it. You don't necessarily have to watch these in any sort of order. If you would like, you can go back and watch the other one first and then come back, or just keep hanging out here. And if you like this one, there's more content for you waiting on the channel. I had a really good time in the weeks that followed that video going through the comments and seeing people's take on some of the books that I cut out and some of the authors that I've mentioned not having read, and having some of you tell me that I should absolutely keep this book on, or that this book is your favorite book and you really would hate to see me kick it off. And I did take all of that into account. I've got it written down in notes. I haven't yet gone through and updated the sheet, but when I do finish going through all of the almost 900 books on this list, I do plan on going back and looking at some of those books that people had commented on and kind of re-reviewing them and giving them their final assortment. And that's really all I have to say at the beginning here. So sit back and watch me go through a giant list of books, and make sure you let me know in the comments if you think I'm making any mistakes here. If there are books that I'm keeping that you think I should remove, and if there's books that I've removed that you think I should keep. I want to hear all of it. All right, here we go. All right, picking up where we left off, we stopped at We Live in Water, which is still here up on the screen. And we had determined that we were going to keep this. So now we're on to 101. We're going to go until we hit 200. So We Were Liars by E. Lockhart. This cover looks familiar. The title does not sound familiar. Young adult mystery, contemporary fiction. None of these are really doing it for me. This synopsis also not doing it for me. Rated decently. Has a lot of ratings. It's not a very long book, but none of it is selling me, so it's out. A Million Little Pieces. This one, I already know that I'm gonna keep. I have this on my shelf. It has a very striking cover. I don't know really what it's about, but this cover with these sprinkles on your finger, I don't know why, but that stands out to me. Okay, yeah, drug abuse, alcohol abuse. Interesting. I didn't realize this was a biography memoir. I did know it was about mental health stuff, which I'm into. This can stay. I feel like I've heard people in my life that have read this say that it's good. I just realized my giant head is blocking the title column here, so I will scroll up. But yeah, I think this can stay. I do, again, have it upstairs, so yeah, this stays. Horns. I believe this is that one book that, I think there's a movie for this with Daniel Radcliffe in it. And I like him quite a bit. I just read through some of the synopsis, and it does sound like it is the same story. I did not realize that this was Joe Hill, who I believe is the son of Stephen King. I got his Full Throttle, I think. It's a collection of short stories or horror short stories. I have that upstairs. I got that from a free little library last year, but I haven't checked that out yet. Maybe I should check that out before keeping this on my TBR, since I do in fact have that, and it might be good to just see if I like his style of writing before I keep this on here. And yeah, who knows? Maybe the movie has been said to be good. I have no idea. Maybe I'll leave it as a question mark. No, I won't. I'm gonna remove it just because I do have that short story collection, and yeah, I think it'll be a good idea to just try that first, unless somebody can tell me that the short story collection is not good and that there's a better starting point for Joe Hill. I'm all ears. So yeah, let me know. Have you read Joe Hill's books? Where should I start? For now, this is gone. Okay, I'm looking here, and I have, what is this? 8 Philip K. Dick books in a row. So I don't want that. Valis, I don't even remember hearing about this book ever in my life. The Maze of Death. Maybe I won't even bother opening all these. I can look at the average rating here if I want and kind of go off of that, I guess. But if I did that, then I would go with this Ubik, which I've not heard of. I really think what I want to do is, remove kind of all of these except for Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep. This one and The Man in the High Castle are definitely the ones that I am most familiar with, at least in terms of, like, I know that I've heard of those books. So I feel pretty comfortable just leaving Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep on here, and if I enjoy that, then I can go back and work my way through the rest of Philip K. Dick's catalog. Again, let me know if you think I should start somewhere else with Philip K. Dick's work, but I think Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep sounds like a good starting point to me. All of his books seem to be on the short to normal side of things. So if I like it, it could be a fun exercise to kind of barrel through the rest of his work. Before moving on, I will pull up at least Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep. This is when Blade Runner came from. For some reason, I thought Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep brought us iRobot, but now that I'm thinking about it, I think that iRobot was a book in its own right, so nothing to do with this. But I did just read through the synopsis here, and it does sound very fun. I have not actually even watched Blade Runner, so maybe it could be fun to have a little session of sci-fi at some point. Read this, watch the movie. I don't know. We'll see. But this is the one that stays. Moving on to The Handmaid's Tale. This is definitely one that I want to read. I read half of it at some point, and I know that I was liking it, but it was just at a time when I wasn't really reading a lot. So I put it down. I never picked it back up. And then the show came out, and I watched some of the show, and the same thing. I was liking it, but for whatever reason, I'm not current on the show. But this is another one of those books that is upstairs on my shelf, ready to go. I think the bookmark is still in it. At some point, I will start it over from the beginning, but yeah, that's definitely one that stays. The Snow Child, on the other hand, I have never heard of before. Obviously, I have because I marked it as want to read, but I have no recollection of hearing about this. I don't know. I can't really explain why, but it's not speaking to me. It's got a lot of the stuff I like. I like fairy tales, like kind of adult fairy tales. At least I like things like T. Kingfisher's books, and they have that fairy tale kind of feel to them. But something about this, I'm not sold. So I'm gonna remove this. Me and Earl and the Dying Girl. I believe I remember crying at this movie. It is a young adult book. I have seen the movie. It already made an impact on me. I know how it ends. I'm going to just go ahead and remove this. I don't think I need to read it, especially with knowing where the story would go. I just don't think it would have a huge impact on me. 2001: A Space Odyssey. I didn't realize that this was part of a series. This does feel kind of like one of those classic sci-fi books that if ever I get better at reading sci-fi books, I would like to have read. So yeah, this can definitely stay. The Big Short. This is another one where I think I probably added this. I don't know when the movie came out, but I probably added this when I saw the trailer for that movie. I think it was Steve Carell, and I'm a sucker for Steve Carell. I could be wrong. I don't know when the movie came out, but the book doesn't really sound like anything I'd be into. I'm not into business, economics, finance stuff like at all. I think I did see the movie, and I think I did enjoy the movie, but I don't need to go through it twice, I guess. And I'm sure there are plenty of differences, and I'm sure that the book is better, but just doesn't seem like it's really my speed. Through the Woods by Emily Carroll. This is another one that doesn't sound familiar at all. 5 mysterious, spine-tingling stories follow journeys into and out of the eerie abyss. So this is a graphic novel, horror comic. That's kind of neat, but not neat enough. You're gone. My grandmother asked me to tell you she's sorry. Frederick Bachman. Frederick Bachman, I suspect will come up a number of times as I go through this list. I want to read Frederick Bachman real bad. I do not know where to start. I do not think that I should start here. I'm thinking probably A Man Called Ove or Beartown, maybe. I think that I will like their work, but again, this just doesn't seem to be the place to start to me. So I'm going to remove that. Harry Potter by J.K. Rowling. We all know Harry Potter. Unfortunately, we all know J.K. Rowling as well. I've removed these from the TBR. These just don't need to be on here. I know this story very well at this point. I've seen all the movies. I've read some of the books. We don't need to spend any more time here. These can just go. Our Souls at Night. Fiction, romance, contemporary. Doesn't really do it for me. Honestly, the synopsis doesn't sound interesting. I have no recollection of this book in my brain. It's pretty short. It's got really good ratings. I could be wrong about this, but I'm going to remove it. Girl at War, Sarah Novick. This one sounds familiar, and I definitely remember the cover. Historical fiction, I haven't gotten into really, strictly because I don't know. I don't know why. I'm not really a history guy, so I kind of feel like I'd be lost in historical fiction books. I don't know if that's really true, but I feel like I just kind of veer away from them often. Civil War in Yugoslavia is definitely not something I know about. I mean, it has potential to be really interesting, but again, it's kind of outside of genres that sound like they'd be up my alley, and so I will be removing this one too. This is great. We're doing great here so far today. Look at that. That's a lot of red. I love that. Go Set a Watchman by Harper Lee. Harper Lee is a name that sounds familiar. I've read 0 Harper Lee books. Ratings here aren't super impressive. This is a sequel. This can go. To Kill a Mockingbird. That I have maybe read. I have no idea. But if I ever did want to read it, I would start at the beginning. So Go Set a Watchman. Goodbye. Mitchell Zugoff's 13 Hours. Another one where I really don't have to spend a lot of time on this. Military fiction doesn't sound like it's something that I need to read about. I also feel like I know a good deal about September 11th already. And I just don't think that I need to work my way through this story. So that's also going to leave. Lone Survivor. This is another one where it's a military fiction. Wait, sorry. It says military fiction, but it also says nonfiction. So I'm not really sure. I would think it's not actually military fiction based on the rest of these genre tags. But again, it's just not something that I feel super interested in any regard. So I'm sure it's great if that's your thing, but it's not really my thing. So that's going to leave. The Revenant, I believe, will stay. I love the cover of this book. I loved the movie of this book. But this is one that I feel like I would be into reading through this one. And again, this one actually is historical fiction. But something about it, maybe it's the fact that it's a Western, it's intriguing to me. And I've not read any Westerns yet, but still, I don't know. Something about this one. I really, really liked the movie. Maybe that's what it is. That's pushing this over the edge. But yeah, this one stays. The Book of Lost Things sounds familiar. YA fantasy fairy tale. A little bit of horror in there. Ooh, we got some spooky books that are talking to this boy, it sounds like. Maybe this can stay. Sounds kind of familiar. Yeah, sure. David is violently propelled into a world that is a strange reflection of his own, populated by heroes and monsters, and ruled by a fated king who keeps his secrets in a mysterious book, the Book of Lost Things. Part fairy tale, part psychological study. I found this to be an engrossing and powerful book. Not that I really like to go off of reviews for anything, but this one does sound good enough to stay. The Girl on the Train. I think this is one of those mystery kind of books. Yeah, it is like fiction, mystery, thriller. I don't know. Not really speaking to me. Hasn't historically been my thing. So I'm going to remove that. If you have like a mystery thriller that you think you would actually recommend, I'd be curious to hear that, because I always just kind of assume that I won't care about these, or at least recently. I don't think that these are things that I will find intriguing. I've recently read some like fantasy mystery books, like fantasy murder mystery, like The Tainted Cup, for example. And I did really like those. So it's possible that I could be into mystery thriller type of stuff, but currently I feel like I would need it to also have those like fantastical elements to it. This one is going to be removed, and probably I will just continue to be removing these mystery thriller type books. But believe it or not, I am always down to kind of branch out of my comfort zone, even though it may not seem like it as I go through this exercise. But I just don't want to pick up any book that's in a new genre. I'd like to pick up a direct recommendation or something like that. Similarly, contemporary romance just doesn't sound interesting to me, especially being like a young adult romance. Just, I don't know, doesn't feel like anything that I'll be into. I have read a couple romance books that are like, you know, romantic-y kind of thing, like fantasy romance, and even those with their fantasy elements, they haven't really landed for me as hard as I want them to. So romance doesn't seem like it's going to be a genre that I'm super into, but there are a couple that I am interested to pick up. But anyway, that's off the point. This book specifically doesn't speak to me. The Fever by Megan Abbott. Young adult, mystery, thriller, with some horror, but it's out. The rating being at a 3 is on the low side. It doesn't have a ton of ratings, all things considered. I mean, 25,000, almost 26,000 is still like a very large number, but I don't know. I like this little panic attack of a novel line. That's gripping, but other than that, yeah, it really, A chilling story about guilt, lies, and the lethal power of desire. No, thank you. I do not desire to read this book. Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance. Okay, I did want to read this. I did at some point even possibly own this. I did want to get my motorcycle license. I don't know that I really am ever going to do that at this point. I think it's also, it's like spirituality and philosophy and all that stuff. So it's not necessarily just about motorcycle maintenance, but I just don't. There's no thank you. I don't need that right now. Milk and Honey, I own this. I've read some of this. It's a book of poems. This will definitely stay. Like I said, I read some of these poems. They're really good. This author is great. So I will be keeping this and maybe just slowly working my way through it over the years. Maybe it doesn't necessarily need to be on the TBR, because if I'm not going to like pick it up and read it all at once, maybe it doesn't need to be here, but I am going to keep it here, because if I ever do read it, I'll mark it as read, and that'll be fun. So yeah, you stay, Milk and Honey. Whiskey Words and a Shovel 1 and 2. We are definitely removing 2, but I have a feeling we might remove both. This again is a book of poems, the second one being the second book of poems. I have a couple books of poetry upstairs, and if I ever make it through those, I'll get some more, but I've never, I don't think, finished a full book of poems, or gotten to the point, at least, in it where I felt finished with it, like I was done with it. Other than Shel Silverstein, I've read, I think, every poem in Falling Up. But this author doesn't sound familiar to me, and if I get to the point where I want more books of poetry, I'll look up books of poetry that I want to read. So these can go. Britt Marie Was Here. This kind of sounds familiar. Okay, we're at another Frederick Bachman. Again, it's not where I think I want to start. A Man Called Ove, right below this, I do think is where I want to start. The only reason I wouldn't start here, possibly, is because I did recently watch A Man Called Otto, and I do feel like I know a lot of the story beats here. I really liked it, the movie, and I think that the whole essence of this story sounds very appealing to me, but it's almost like I already know that I will like it. I already know that I do like it. So I don't necessarily know if I need to read this first. You know what? Honestly, maybe I'll put this as a question mark because I need to do more digging before I can really say where I'll start with Frederick Bachman's work. Dry. Ooh, that's quite a cover. Very pretty. Young adult dystopian. We went over a lot of dystopian books in the last part. This does not sound familiar to me. It doesn't sound bad, but it's just doesn't sound like it needs to be on my short list here. So I will be removing this one. Mr. Miracle, Volume 1. Jack Kirby. Interesting. It's a DC comic. I don't know anything about Mr. Miracle. I do like Darkseid, but I'm going to go ahead and just kind of take this out for now. Could be good. Probably is pretty fun, but I don't know. I don't know who this is. Deadly Class #1. This one can stay. Actually, I immediately take it back. This is gonna go. I know of this. I see this often at stores when I'm looking through graphic novels, and I always skip right by it and don't pick it up. So I don't see me picking it up anytime soon. So yeah, you're out, Deadly Class. I do think it's something that I would like, but it's not something that I'm dying to read. So it's out. Station 11. I'm gonna pull this up, but I already know this is staying. I also know that I am sure I have at least 2 other Emily St. John Mandel books on this TBR, and I will be breaking the rule, or I have no rules, but I will be leaving all of them on here, despite the fact that I've read 0 of her books, and that's because I've just heard such good things, and I am so confident that I'm going to enjoy all of the books, especially this one. But I really feel confident that Emily St. John Mandel is going to do it for me. So this definitely stays. And if I come across more Emily St. John Mandels, which again, I'm sure that I will, spoiler alert, they're all going to stay. The Lady Alchemist. I've read The Alchemist. I doubt that this is related because it's a different author. Ooh, that's a cool cover. Look at that snake. That's neat. It's a retelling of what? Cepha. Honestly, none of this sounds like anything I've ever heard of before. The cover is really cool. I'm surprised it's on here, kind of, because it does have, under 500 ratings. It's only like 4 years old. So I feel like it would be more present in my brain. I have no recollection of it, and I will be just removing it. Yeah. Lore Olympus. Lore Olympus is another one that I see on the shelf often. I feel like it could be fun. I think it's like YA graphic novel. It is some sort of mythology. Oh, maybe it's not. I don't know. It doesn't say YA in the top, at least. It says adult. It could be pretty cool. It's a love story between Hades and Persephone. I mean, that's neat. The art style does look gorgeous from what I remember. This can stay. Again, my giant head has been blocking the spreadsheet, so sorry about that. The next one, The Kind Worth Killing. Crime, thriller, not for me, I don't think, at least. I'm going to remove it. The Last Time I Lied. Riley Sager is an author that I want to check out, but I don't think The Last Time I Lied is where I would start. I feel like I've said that a couple times today, but yeah, the only one left, or Final Girls, are the ones that I feel like I've heard about more often. Maybe also the House Across the Lake. Honestly, The Last Time I Lied doesn't actually sound familiar at all. Again, I know that I want to read something by Riley Sager, but this won't be it, I don't think. The Lovely Bones is potentially another one that's on my shelf upstairs. Oh, definitely. It's either on my shelf or it's at my mom's house on her shelf. I've seen this cover a lot. I didn't realize it was a young adult mystery. I feel like I keep pointing out young adult, and I want to make a point to say that I have nothing against young adult novels. I haven't read one in a while, but there are a lot of them that I have read that I've thoroughly enjoyed. So when I call out that it's a young adult book, it's just me calling out words that I see on the screen. It's not like a ding against the book in any way. I will be leaving this on just because, again, I think I do own it, and I feel like I remember somebody, maybe even in my family, has read it and enjoyed it. Possibly my mom. So we'll see. But no, that's not really what this is about. Do I see myself reading this anytime soon? Not necessarily. And if I do pick it up ever, it'll be because I saw it on my shelf, not because I saw it on my Goodreads to be read pile, if that makes any sense at all. So inconsistent with some of what I'm doing, but this will go away. Okay, we have Delicates and Sheets here. It looks like Delicates is the sequel to Sheets. I do not know what this is. This looks like an adorable graphic novel, middle grade, which I don't know that I've really read any middle grade since being of that age group. This does look kind of adorable, but yeah, I don't see myself gravitating towards this story anytime soon. Maybe eventually, maybe down the line when my son is in the middle grade age group, we'll pick this up and read it together, but I don't need this on my short list. Bloom, possibly in a similar vein. Yeah, okay, similar vein. I've already pointed out that I don't know that romance is typically for me, although, I mean, Song of Achilles is like one of my favorite books, and that's definitely, romance is a big focus of that book, but I don't know that romance graphic novels will do it for me. I don't know why I don't think that. I don't know. I'm going to remove it. Paper Girls, Volume 1. I will be removing this because I have read Paper Girls Volume 1. Yeah, it's funny. I guess Volume 1 isn't marked as read here because I read because I read like a different, what did I read? Like book 1, kind of. It was like, I think the first 10 volumes or something. And I've also, I think I'm in the middle of the second of those like books. But anyway, Volume 1 I've definitely read. So this can go, and I should make sure that my Goodreads is up to date with what I've actually read out of this series. I do really love Brian K. Vaughan's stuff. If you haven't checked out any of it, I don't think Paper Girls is a bad place to start, but I do think Saga is some of his best work. Call Me By Your Name. Okay, we're back in romance, but for some reason, this specifically, I think that I will like, and this is going to stay on the list. It is something that I want to read. I don't know that I'll get to it anytime soon, but I do feel strongly that I will get to this. King of Scars 1 and 2, Leigh Bardugo. Honestly, King of Scars does not ring a single bell in my brain. Leigh Bardugo does. Because of that, I think both of these can safely be removed. If I am going to read Leigh Bardugo, I'd probably start with Shadow and Bone or maybe Six of Crows. I think those are the two big ones. The Egg by Andy Weir. I don't know why I haven't read this. I believe it is, yeah, it says it's 3 pages. This is a short story by Andy Weir. I think there's even like an animated version online that's supposed to be awesome. This stays. I love Andy Weir. I've read 2 of his books so far, and they've been fantastic. I really want to read Artemis. Anyway, this stays for sure. Beautiful World, Where Are You? Sally Rooney. For some reason, I feel like Sally Rooney won't be my author, but if I was going to pick up Sally Rooney, I don't think it would be Beautiful World, Where Are You? It's not a title I'm familiar with, and I think that they have bigger books or books that are held in higher regard. The Sympathizer. This falls in a category by itself, and that category is books that don't necessarily sound interesting to me that I think I would like. This is the kind of book that I was kind of talking about before, where I'm like, if you think there's a book outside of the genres that I typically frequent that I would like, let me know. I feel like The Sympathizer is that book for historical fiction. I don't know if that's true, but I know that I was very loosely friends with somebody at an old job, and he recommended this so highly to me, to the point where I feel like I'm doing myself a disservice by not reading it. I just forget that it exists because it's in a TBR with 900 other books, so I never think to pick it up. All that being said, this is gonna stay. Wow, what a title. Faster. How a Jewish driver, an American heiress, and a legendary car beat Hitler's best. What does that mean? What is any of that? Okay, top things that I'm not interested in. Sports. That's it. But that being said, there have been some racing like movies that I've really enjoyed. So it's very possible that this could be really good. And World War II is interesting, even if I'm not like a history buff. It says it's for fans of The Boys in the Boat and The Garden of Beasts. I don't know what either of those things are. I think it could potentially be very good. It doesn't have a ton of reviews. It doesn't have a ton of ratings. It is rated high. But I think this is just going to be removed. And if I hear anybody say that they've read this, I'll probably quickly put it back on the list. But for now, I think this can just go pretty safely. Black Cake. Black Cake I'm going to remove. My mother-in-law read this with her book club, and I feel like she wasn't super into it. So a real life person not recommending the book is enough. I do see that it is widely regarded on the internet here, but it doesn't sound like anything that I'm pining for. It is a pretty big name, and I will see it all over the place. So maybe later in life I will change my mind on that. But for now, it doesn't need to be part of my list. A History of Wild Places. The cover of this is very familiar. And it is fantasy, which is good, but it's mystery thriller, which is, I don't know, maybe good. I really don't know. Okay, so there's a community where no one's allowed in or out when there's risk of bringing a disease. It says it's a story about fairy tales, our fear of the dark, and losing yourself within the wilderness of your mind. Okay, I could be sold on that. I think that can stay. That sounds cool. That sounds interesting. That sounds fun. I'll keep it. I'll keep you. Greenwich Park. I'm just gonna remove. I just don't need that. I don't know. Doesn't sound interesting. Shadow Life. I like the title of this one. Shadow Life. Okay, the cover's cool too. It's a graphic novel, queer fiction, magical realism, observational slice of life, literary fiction with poetic magical realism. That's a lot of fancy words. I don't know. I'm sure it's good. I don't think I'm gonna read that. I'm cool taking that out. S.A. Chakraborty. This name, sorry, I probably mispronounced that, but that does sound familiar. The City of Brass sounds familiar. Okay, we have a familiar title, a familiar cover, a familiar author name, but I don't know anything about this book. Aha! The Adventures of Amina al-Sarafi. I know that one. And I also know that I do not think, from everything that I've heard, that I would like that book. I don't know anything about this one. I just read through some of the synopsis. It could be neat, but it's not doing anything for me, honestly. I definitely don't need books 2 and 3, but I think I'm going to remove 1 as well. Here again, twice in a row, we have 3 books from a single author. Time Enough for Love. This seems like it's a series. I wonder if those other 2 books are from the same series. They are not. Oh, Starship Troopers and Stranger in a Strange Land. Okay, those sound much more familiar to me than Time Enough for Love. I have not read either. Weirdly, or maybe it's not that weird, but Stranger in a Strange Land sounds to me like the one that I'd be most into, even though the rating is technically lower on that one than the other 2. I will keep Strangers in a Strange Land. I'm half expecting somebody to tell me that I should kick that and put Starship Troopers back on, and that's totally fine. I'm okay to do that, but I definitely don't need all 3 of these, and Stranger in a Strange Land just sounds good to me. So yeah, I feel good about that. Persephone Station. Yes, Persephone Station. I don't know anything about this, but I do remember this cover. And I am very confident that I was walking through a bookstore and I saw this cover and I thought it was striking and I added it to my TBR but I don't know anything about it. I don't think I ever knew anything about it. Reading the synopsis now, the synopsis sounds kind of interesting. It says it's for fans of The Mandalorian, haven't seen it, and Cowboy Bebop, have never read it, seen it, anything like that. I just don't think this gets to stay. Bringing Up the Boss, practical lessons for new managers. Ah, yes, this. I bet it's a great management book. I am not currently looking to be a manager, so I don't need that. Goodbye. Leviathan Wakes. This is gonna stay. Happy to see only book 1 of the series on my TBR. I think that this book and this series has the potential to be the sci-fi series that finally takes me in. At least I hope that is the case. This will absolutely stay. A few friends of mine have read this recently, and they've had nothing but good things to say about it. I'm very excited about this. I'm hoping to get to this next year. We'll see. I don't know how big of a sci-fi year it'll be, but if I'm gonna get into sci-fi, I really do think it'll be something like this. The Immortalists, again, this is another one. It's just gonna stay. I have this on my shelf. It was highly recommended to me by my brother, who read it, loved it, and I think he said it kind of reminded him of our childhood and growing up together, even though this is definitely a fantasy book. So I'm very curious about all of that, and it's gonna stay. I'm thinking I'm going to get to this relatively soon too, so I'm excited about this one. Still Just a Geek, an annotated memoir. I really like Will Wheaton. I was never really a Star Trek guy, and that's kind of where I feel like he kind of got his start. But I think he's a really interesting guy. He had this YouTube series, I think it was called Tabletop, and it was just him and like often kind of just like nerdy celebrities, but just also some of his family were in there and some just friends were in there. And they just played board games together, and it was a great series, and I miss it dearly. I think he's fun. He's narrated a couple books that I've read too, and I like his narration. I think if you don't like Will Wheaton, then none of his stuff will land with you. But if you do like Will Wheaton, then his narration is really good. Specifically, Kaiju Preservation Society. I had just so much fun with that. I don't know if I think he's like a world-class audiobook narrator, but I think if you like Will Wheaton, then it's fun to listen to them talk. None of that matters. This is his annotated memoir. I think Just a Geek exists, and then Still Just a Geek also exists. I don't believe it's a sequel. I think it's more like it says it's an annotated memoir. I think it's just the same book, but with additional notes on it. I think it would be interesting to read one day. And yeah, I'm going to keep it. I think he's cool from the very little I know about him. People We Meet on Vacation by Emily Henry. This is another one that I'm kind of surprised to see here. My wife just read this recently, and she liked it. And at no point did I really feel like she thought that I would enjoy it. So I think I can safely remove it. Four Treasures of the Sky. This does not sound familiar at all. And the author also doesn't sound familiar at all. That's a gorgeous cover, though. Let's take a second to look at that. That's really cool. Oh, I like that a lot. Historical fiction taking place in China. This is another one that does sound like it's probably very good, and it sounds like it's probably very interesting, but it also just doesn't sound like it's going to be anything that I want to read. I don't think that I would enjoy reading it. So for those reasons, I'm going to be removing it. Three Body Problem, another one that I don't even have to pull up before telling you that I will be keeping this on the list. Would love to read it someday. I think this falls into the category of sci-fi that might feel too smart for me, whereas like Leviathan Wakes, I don't think it will feel too smart for me. Netflix put out an adaptation of this somewhat recently, and I watched season 1, and I liked it a lot, and so I am amped to read this someday, hopefully relatively soon. So yeah, this can stay. Kafka on the Shore. Murakami is an author that I definitely want to read. He's another one where I'm not sure where to start. I think Kafka on the Shore is often the recommendation for that. As a matter of fact, I don't know that any of these other books really sound familiar to me outside of IQ 84. I do think if I was going to read one of those two, it would be this. So when we get to IQ 84, hopefully I remember that I said this and I remove that one. This can stay. The Vanishing Half, I think this is upstairs on my shelf, but I also don't think that I've ever really considered picking it up and reading this. That feels correct. Maybe someday, but it just doesn't sound like it's for me right now. So it goes. The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. This sounds pretty good, and this is on my shelf, and I have heard really good things. So this one can stay. I do think that I'd enjoy this one. Heroes by Stephen Fry. Absolutely gonna stay. I read Mythos a few years back. I did the audiobook for it, actually, where Stephen Fry is the narrator. And it was tremendous. I gave it 5 stars. Really, really good. And I'm very excited to read through the rest of this series. It's another one where I know that I have book 2, 3, and 4 listed as I want to read, kind of like Emily St. John Mandel, but I want to keep them all. This series in particular, each book, I believe, is kind of standing on its own. I think it helps to read them in order, possibly. I know, for example, in the most recent one, The Odyssey, the author's added footnotes where he'll mention, go back to Mythos, this page, this part, for more context on this. So I think in that way, it's helpful to have read the other ones. But my understanding is that you can just pick any of these up. I do own Heroes, and I will be picking this one up next. So this can stay, and again, when we get to the others, they will also stay. We're getting close to the end of today's. We're at 183. The Marvels. Middle grade historical fiction graphic novel. Another one where it just doesn't sound like it's for me. It's probably very good, but it's 664 pages, and I don't feel anything when I read this synopsis, so it's out of here. Before the Coffee Gets Cold. I'm kind of surprised that the rating is in the mid-3s here. I just assumed it would be higher. Very short book, this one. And I think the premise is really cool. You go into a coffee shop, and you sit at this one table, and you're taken back in time, I believe, until your coffee gets cold. I think this just explores a bunch of people going to the coffee shop and kind of doing that experiment, going back in time and maybe playing with it and seeing what they could change or what they would change or if they would change anything maybe. It sounds really cool. I think there's a few books in the series. And anyway, yeah, this stays. I would love to pick this up at some point, hopefully soon. Again, very short. Loveless by Alice Osman? I don't know. I mean, it could be good, but again, it's a romance, young adult romance. It really just doesn't feel like it'll be my thing. The Midnight Library, this one can stay. I've heard really good things, and I own it. So, yeah, I know very little about this, but what I do know is that people view it in a very favorable light, so that can stay. Where the Crawdads Sing, not so sure about this one. I think this will go down as a question mark. I'm curious what people think. If you've read it and seen the movie, do you think they're different enough to warrant reading it? I feel like the movie did a really good job, and I feel like the end of the movie, which I assume is the same as the end of the book, like dropped my jaw to the floor. Really caught me by surprise, and I just don't think that reading it now after knowing this ending where it feels like the whole story builds up to the end, and at least I was very surprised. But I feel like if I read it knowing the ending, I don't know, maybe it could be cool, because maybe there's all these Easter eggs kind of spread out throughout the book, so maybe that's like really interesting, but maybe there's just no payoff, because you already know how it ends. So yeah, curious if anybody has thoughts on that, but I'm putting it down as a question mark. I could see myself probably removing that one. If you have not read it and you have not watched the movie, definitely do at least one of those, because the movie at least was very good, and I'm sure the book is great too. The Tao of Pooh This stays very cute, and again, I have it on my shelf. Who doesn't love Winnie the Pooh? Panenka. I've heard very good things. I don't know anything about Ireland really, except that I went to Ireland once and I loved it. This is Irish literature. I don't know that I've read a ton of contemporary fiction, but the synopsis here sounds really good. It sounds kind of like maybe a tough read in terms of like, I don't know, it sounds like it's probably pretty powerfully written. And to be perfectly honest, I'm not 100% sure why I think this can stay when I've kicked some others out, but ultimately it's a gut thing, and for some reason deep in my gut I feel like I would enjoy this book, so it's gonna stay. The Gone World, I don't know what this is. Inception meets True Detective. I mean, that's quite a claim. Interesting. Sci-fi horror is not something that I've experienced. Time travel can get tricky. Mystery thriller. In the opposite vein of Panenka, this all sounds really good, but I, for whatever reason, don't think that I'd be into it. I can't explain it right now. It's another one where if somebody just says anything positive about it in the comments, I'll keep it. But for now, it's out of here. Heartstopper Volume 1. Heartstopper sounds very adorable, and one of the characters is named Charlie, which is fun. I think I'll keep it. I've almost picked this one up several times. There are some things that I come across on this list, and I know that I've seen them and passed them up multiple times, but this one I've reached for. This one I've picked up off the shelf. I've strongly considered picking this up, and I know the adaptation exists. I think people like it a lot, but I think if I was going to take in this story, I would pick up the graphic novel. So yeah, I feel comfortable keeping this on the list. Very similar with Akira. Akira, they have very striking covers, and honestly, I think the spines are also really cool. This is a manga series. It sounds really good to me. It's like a sci-fi cyberpunk, yeah, it says it right here, dystopian world. It says it's set in Neo-Tokyo, built on the ashes of Tokyo annihilated by a blast of unknown origin that triggered World War III. It sounds just really good to me, honestly. The whole synopsis. I'm into it, I'm sold, and it will stay. Red Rising, Red Rising, Red Rising. I have tried to read this book. I have tried so many times. I've lost count. I don't think it's the series for me. People have told me to just start at book 2. I'm considering it maybe at some point, but I don't know. I can't see myself doing that, skipping the first book. But I've really tried this book several times, and I've quit around the halfway point most of the time. The most recent time, I think I made it closer to 75%, and it really just doesn't do anything for me. I know I'm going to make some people mad. I can think of a couple in particular when I say this, but every time I read this book, I feel the same way that I felt when I read Dragon Rider and Will of the Many recently. And that feeling is that I just don't get it. Like, I feel like I'm missing something. It just doesn't do anything for me. I'm reading it. Those 2 books I finished, but both of them, I feel like I kind of had to drag myself through the end. And those 2 did pick up a little more than this one did. But by the end of both of them, I was like, oh, okay, that was cool. I don't know. I don't know that I need to continue either of those series. This one, I don't think I really ever need to pick up again. So I will be removing this. It's possible that one day I will try it again. But right now, I feel comfortable just taking it off the list. It's just gone. I can give up. I can just forget about it. We addressed Neil Gaiman a little bit in part 1. I'm just removing his books from here. Ariadne. This one's going to stay. It's a Greek mythology. I know one person who read it and they did not like it kind of at all. But I don't know. I don't know why. I feel like I'm going to keep it. One day I'm going to try Jennifer Saint's Greek mythology. So it'll stay. And then boom, here's Stephen Fry. Stephen Fry, again, they're going to stay here. We've already talked about why I'm going to keep them both, but yes, I am going to keep them both. Snow Crash, this is a classic, and I will also be keeping this one here. It's classic sci-fi, and it is dystopian and cyberpunk, and that all sounds really cool. I feel like I've heard people on the internet say that this is great, and then I've heard one person in real life tell me that they didn't like it. But whatever, I'm intrigued enough to check it out for sure at some point. I'm not sure when, but again, I really want to like sci-fi, so I'm looking for entry points into sci-fi. Sex Criminals Volume 1, One Weird Trick. I have heard that this is good. I don't know. The premise is very... I don't know. The premise is odd. It's funny. The main character, when they have sex, can stop time. And so they meet somebody who has the same ability. And so they go around and do crimes with their weird power. So I don't know if it's really anything that I would actually pick up. It sounds very silly, but I'm just gonna remove it. I don't think it really needs to stay here. Maybe if it comes across my desk one day, I'll pick it up. It just doesn't do anything. I'm in no rush to add this to my shelf. And we are done. Look at that. The last two here were, again, Neil Gaiman, and again, I'm just removing him from my TBR until further notice. So that brings us actually to 201, and actually I see that 202 is Emily St. John Mandel again, who we will be keeping. So I'll just say that we're ending there. Randomly at 202, that's just where we are. And it looks like out of that chunk of 102 books, we cut it down to 34. That's great. Like I said, at some point, this list is in chronological order of when I added them to my Goodreads TBR. So my assumption is that as we go through it, there will be more and more of them that stay on the list. As of now, we just made it to August of 2022 in the spreadsheet. So the books that we've looked at up till that point are books that I've added, some of them as far back as 2013. My taste has definitely changed since 2013, as we've seen when I've removed these giant swaths of books. So obviously, the further we get through the list, the more recently added these books are. So I'll be shocked if we continue at this pace of, cutting 70 books out of a chunk of 100-ish books. I assume that we will see more and more books remain on the list as we go. But I'm going to try to continue to be as cutthroat as I've been, and I really do want to trim this list down by a lot. So it should be interesting, though, to see how my taste has changed in the last couple of years, and to see how truly unhinged I've become with this list. Again, we've made it now to line 202, and we are in late 2022. So there's not that much time between then and now, all things considered, and I've managed to add, in those couple of years, 687 more books to this list. So we'll see if that means that I've gotten really good at curating this TBR, or if more likely I've gotten just unhinged with adding things to the list. So we'll see. We'll see where we land. No spoilers, though. Let's go back. Okay, gonna call it there. And that's where we're gonna end today. So thanks for coming back and hanging out. And if you do have any thoughts on any of the books that I've taken out, if you think that I've made a horrible mistake and I should definitely keep this or that, let me know. Similarly, if you think I'm keeping something and you think that's misguided, let me know. And I can take it off. Today there were definitely a couple authors that I know I want to read these authors and I don't know where to start. So if you have any thoughts, especially on that, I would love to hear it. What is your favorite Frederick Bachman book? Where should I start there? How about Joe Hill? How about any of the other ones that I mentioned today? Let me know. I look forward to hanging out with you in the comments, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.